Welcome to Let's Talk Jonesboro. Today our guest is Dr. Edward Salo. He is a historic preservationist and assistant professor at Arkansas State University. Welcome, Doctor.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Now we met recently you were speaking to a group at the library about historic preservation, and that is an issue. I think Jonesboro has probably been behind the curve in some regards in historic preservation of neighborhoods. And I think you had a lot of interesting points that people wanted to make. Tell me your history of Jonesboro as far as looking out for our historic preservation sites.
Well, I was hired at A-State in 2014 to come teach historic preservation to our history students and our students in our Heritage Studies PhD program. Before that, I had lived in Texas, South Carolina, Florida, doing historic preservation work, consulting work. And they wanted someone who had real-world experience and could help students with projects around the community and also help the community, because that's one of the missions of Arkansas State, is to assist the community in any way we can. So I came here in 2014. I grew up in a similar size community in East Tennessee with a college, with a hospital. When I moved here, it felt really, really comfortable. And since then, we've been working on several projects in Jonesboro and the surrounding area to try to help people document and get their resources on the state or national register.
That wouldn't happen to have been Murfreesboro, would it?
No, I did that's where I did my graduate work. I went to, I grew up in Johnson City.
Johnson City, yep. So. You're near the mountains there.
Oh, yeah.
Now, tell me what your impressions were of insofar as Jonesboro and its maintaining its historic buildings and so forth.
Well, when I first came for my interview, the first place they took me, I flew in on a Sunday and they took me downtown to eat, and to show me how the downtown was and they told me how downtown used to be, and in like 10 years how it had slowly started coming back, and in the past 4 years I've seen a lot more changes. And they took me around to some of the older parts of town to show me houses, and I think that Jonesboro, while there's a lot of stuff that has been lost, there's still a lot of stuff that's out there that maybe we don't think about.
Right.
A lot of times there's historic buildings and we see them every day. We don't pay any attention to them because we see them every day.
Right, right.
And historic buildings don't have to be just the pretty homes like we have on Main Street, which
right.
We still have a lot. I mean, historic neighborhoods can be the neighborhoods of, that we think of middle class, lower class citizens that they grew up in, and it doesn't have to be just the prettiest home that everybody loves. It's the places that tell our stories.
I've lived in places where entire cities had their neighborhoods designated as historic preservation neighborhoods. And it seems to save, in college towns, it seems to save beautiful old homes from becoming apartment complexes and dilapidated housing. But I've also seen towns that are kind of like Jonesboro, where you might have a beautiful home, and then a wreck.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of people in Jonesboro, particularly those who love those neighborhoods and want them to see them succeed, to protect what they have and not lose what's being lost. What types of things do they need to do, or what types of things can the city do to help them?
There's several things. First step is for us to know what's out there, and in that process we call inventory, and that's our students have been working on that. Private individuals have been working on that. That's just going out there, working with the state of Arkansas to document what historic buildings are out there and what historic buildings are gone. Sometimes, the state is really good about wanting to know when something's torn down too, so that we're not sitting there thinking, oh, this building is here and it's not. But getting out there, finding what's historic, finding those neighborhoods, finding maybe just those blocks. Maybe there's a couple good blocks that have a nice collection of historic homes. Maybe there's just one that's an island in a block. And then our first step is inventorying them and then working on getting them designated as historic. The National Register and there's a state register too. Both are, you have to apply. It doesn't cost anything to apply and get it on the register. They can help you at the state. At Arkansas State University, we help people too. And getting it on the register it doesn't take away any of your property rights.
That's what people worry about.
Yeah, people are worried about. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina for a long time, and they have a wonderful historic district, with colonial and early 1800s homes, and they have a lot of rules in their district. Yeah, everyone's like, well, if it's historic, they can tell me what color I can paint and what I can't paint. And in that case, yes. But, in a district that would be in Jonesboro, it wouldn't be that.
Right.
The rules wouldn't be that
I see.
tough. I mean, you still have the rights. If you wanted to paint your house, blue, you can do that.
Right.
It's the state does have some regulations. If you use their grant money, they do want you to do certain things because they're investing money in it. But if you just had a normal house, you put it on the register, and you decided later on that you wanted to tear it down, you have those rights.
I see.
But after that, after getting things registered, you have then the potential of developing city ordinances or for the preservation districts. And this would go through the council just like anything. And you can make a set of rules just like you have for any, I live in a neighborhood, we have a covenant, there's certain things you can do, there's certain things you can't do. You can't keep a car in your front yard. Well, fine, we all agreed on that. And and that's this kind of thing too is, yes, if you had a historic district with preservation ordinance and you want to make sure somebody doesn't put prefab metal buildings up in the backyard that would take away from the historic nature, then that could be something that people agree on.
Yeah.
But just like any other local ordinance, it's what the local government decides on.
You can shape it the way you want it to be shaped.
And having that ordinance and having that historic district then does open you up to more grants for not only individuals but the city to do more historic preservation work.
Well, and that's the key to a lot of things, because as we try to pound home to people to understand, about 70% of the city's sales tax dollars, which is our primary source of revenue, goes to salaries for the city employees, of the firemen, the policemen, and the staff, and all the different departments that work. So grant funding is critical, and it can be used for homeowners, which I think people may not, a lot of people may not be aware of. Those who are most involved in it probably are, but I think there are some doors to be opened for a lot of people who aren't aware of all the options that are out there for them.
Right, and there's a lot of really nice homes. Thinking of the neighborhoods that are kind of west of and east of Main Street. There's a lot of really nice homes there that are convenient to downtown. They're convenient to Highland. They're convenient to Southwest. You're not like stuck out somewhere. They've got good schools here in Jonesboro, and some of these homes would be really great with a little work. Some
Right.
of them don't even need a little work.
That's right.
Some of them, yeah. So.
Well, and I've seen towns where, like I said, a lot of the older homes became apartment
Yeah.
for college students. But I've seen those homes be resurrected, and then suddenly you've got this quaint neighborhood. It doesn't have to be huge, it can be just a couple or 3 blocks, but you've got a beautiful neighborhood where the birds chirp and the the snakes all dance and everybody walks by holding hands and singing.
And that's one thing that is attractive to outsiders coming into a town if they're looking to relocate a business or just relocating their families. We've got hospitals here, we've got the university. As we're trying to recruit for all these industries and businesses, showing them some of these neighborhoods that are, like you were saying, quaint and nice, and the fact that the town's taking care of its history. A lot of people, they look at that, and if you're not taking care of the history or taking care of the town, it's kind of a red flag that people are like, well, if they're not taking care of this, what else are they not taking care of? Right. And that's a way to get people interested in coming into your town.
That's right. And I heard recently someone say that across America, at least across the heartland of America, we all tend to live pretty much alike. What separates us is our downtowns. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about downtown. Those who've been here a decade or more can talk about how downtown is been revitalized, but it's not thorough. It's not where we want it to be yet, I don't think. And tell me what you see, what are the obstacles and what can be done to overcome those obstacles?
And this is one thing we talk about in my historic preservation class is you can invest as much money as you want in restoring a building or a downtown, but if it's not going to be used, what use is going to eventually go back down.
It'll be, yeah.
And downtowns, we've all seen downtowns that are either all lawyers' offices around a courthouse square or all antique shops.
Right.
And then at 5 o'clock, everyone's done, it's dead. To me, a downtown, and Jonesboro is getting close, it's working on that, is a place that should be livable. And we have lofts, we have restaurants.
And they're largely full.
Right. But there needs to be those other things, those things that, personally, I was kind of a little heartbroken that the barber shop and the dry cleaners that were on, Union were closed.
Yeah.
Just because those are kind of some of the services that, you come home, I need to drop my stuff off at the cleaners.
Yeah.
And,
you don't have to drive to
right.
it. Right.
And there's a grocery store close by. But those kind of things to make it more of a livable place. Places that you can go, places you can do the shopping you need to. We've got great restaurants. There's other things to do, entertainment, but just some of those other activities that people do in their common life.
You're right.
And some of that stuff is close by, like I was saying, and just ensuring that it's easy to walk to the grocery or easy to walk to the library or churches without people feeling like they're taking their own lives in their hands or stuff.
Right. Which, and having lived in other cities, I just find I can't get in the mindset of those people because I walk downtown quite often. I live not too far from downtown, and I can take an evening stroll and feel totally at ease any time of day or night. There's some places that need to be more well lit, and I think we've got some leaders that are taking care of that. But I have never felt unsafe in Jonesboro for a minute. And
no,
please, nobody start trying to make me feel that way. But
yeah, no, I do plays down at the FOA and things, and I never feel safe. I always feel safe. Now, sometimes there's some traffic that scares me crossing streets, but
right.
Other than that,
right. we don't have a grasp that there's more modes of traffic than vehicle.
Right.
You've got to respect the other types of traffic, I think, and we can enforce that a little bit better. But tell me what you see as the initial steps. the baby steps that lead us to the bigger steps?
Well, like I was saying, I think the first step is to find individuals that are interested in getting their individual houses or or businesses or commercial buildings or just like a small, like we were saying, a block or two. You can have a historic district that's just a block.
Right.
Find those people that are interested in getting their properties listed on the National Register. And Arkansas State, my classes can help these people, and it's free of charge service. Gets the students work. May not be as fast as some of the consultants, but get that going, get those things started, and then once we have some of these districts, start talking to the people, see if they're interested in some preservation ordinances to protect their neighborhoods or blocks, and then also for people to start thinking about the history of the community. We have a great historical society, but maybe we need a preservation society too that looks at that. And for people to start appreciating what's around. When you're walking around downtown, look at some of the buildings. Maybe that's something that the city can work with A-State or some of the East Labs to develop some walking tours, or just featuring some of the buildings, like a building of the month history on a website. The library's been doing a really good job collecting old historic photos of the town. So just getting people to appreciate not only what's here, but also what's been lost. That's one thing in the history of historic preservation, is a lot of times people don't start thinking about preserving buildings until we lost something big.
Right.
And you don't want that to have to be what is the catalyst.
Right.
Because there's been a lot of buildings that have been lost for various reasons, but maybe we don't have to lose that really one big thing.
Better not to lose than
Right.
than to try to think we're making a future
And
doesn't respect our history.
And there's so many buildings that we use today that are historic that people don't think about. The county courthouse, New Deal project, how many people go in there to do whatever they need to,
Right.
and probably never even think about the history of that building.
That's absolutely.
And the buildings downtown. Sometimes I have the students do histories of those, and just to see the various uses of them, from pool halls to grocery stores to barber shops to bookstores to all these things that you never would think of. Because now buildings are usually for one purpose. A Walmart is a Walmart.
Right.
It's a big store. But back then it was like, okay, this store is a grocery. Well, that went out of business. Some other guy comes in and puts in, a pool hall. It's the same building. You can do the same kind of things. The buildings maybe were a little more adaptable.
Yeah.
And like we know now, Gearhead's in what used to be a department store, but
Right.
it's doing that. And there's some of those restaurants that were in grocery stores or.
Right. There's some fabulous places. I'd hate to lose any. Tell us, before we go, tell us a little bit about your class, specifically who it's for, who would gain from it, and what they would learn. I mean, we talked about some of it clearly, but fill us in on the rest of it.
All right. I teach on, 3 levels at Arkansas State. We have a PhD program in Heritage Studies, which those students are looking at. It's an interdisciplinary examination. So we've got English professors, folklorists, historians, museum people, people in communications with photography, looking at how people use and document and their heritage. not always history. It's what makes us us.
Yeah.
I've got one student who's working on his dissertation looking at how a certain Christian denomination trains its ministers as a way that reflects its belief system.
Really?
So we have those students. Then we have graduate students in history, and they're working on their masters. And we've started offering some courses for undergrads. When I started in history, and this was in the early 90s, I didn't really know what I could do with history.
Mm-hmm.
I was just taking the courses because I liked them, and
Yeah.
I was really a political science major because I wanted to go to law school. Didn't happen. Well, I went to law school, but I didn't like it. But I had all these history classes because I liked history. And I think a lot of people like history. They just don't know they like history. They may not have liked history in high school, but
Right.
what kind of movies do we see? What kind of TV shows do we like? Where do people go on vacation? They go to history, related topics. They go to Vicksburg, or they go to, because history isn't just politicians.
Right.
One of the best museums, in Memphis is the Civil Rights Museum, but then, it talks about the struggle for the civil rights. But if you go there, you see all this great social and cultural history.
Right.
And then you can go down the streets a little bit and go to Sun Records, and they're telling the same they're telling a story too about racial desegregation through music.
Right. That's
so,
true.
And then they're also telling a story of some really great music.
There's a lot of great ways to get involved in history. And now we're off subject here, but I need to ask you this. What are your favorite podcasts, your favorite history podcasts?
I'm gonna show my complete geek thing, because I do historic preservation, but my two interests in history are the history of comic books in America, which I teach. I teach a course on that, looking at how comics reflect what's going on in America at the time. For example,
That's awesome.
I have students look at the first Action Comics with Superman, and he wasn't fighting Lex Luthor or any kind of supervillain. He was fighting a corrupt politician, a landlord, and a guy who was beating his wife.
Is that right?
Yeah,
That's who
so it's-
Superman protected.
Yeah, and it was that Superman represented the New Deal. And then the other thing I listen to is, I'm interested in the history of professional wrestling, as and just some of the aspects of it. And we've got, it's an interesting, just like people study any kind of sport or entertainment. Some of the aspects of the business side. We've got a rich history of it here in town, and so I listen to a lot of podcasts related to the history of those two things, and then some news items. And I really don't read that many, listen to that many history ones, because
That's kind of your specialty.
I listen to podcasts while I'm walking, exercising and walking dogs and doing housework, so it's kind of my fun time.
Yeah, I get it. I don't listen to that many communication director podcasts either, so it
Yeah.
probably was a bad question.
Well,
But I enjoyed what I learned from it.
yeah. So I joke that if I can make a career doing history of comic books and professional wrestling and saving buildings, what more can you ask for?
Life is worth living.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, Dr. Salo, thank you for
Well, thank
taking
you.
the time to visit with us on Let's
And-
Talk Jonesboro.
And like I was saying, if anyone's interested, just contact me at the university.
Give us your contact information.
Well, the easiest way to reach me is my email is esalo@astate.edu, and my office number is 972-3130. And if I'm not there, we've got voicemail, so you can just leave a message and I'll call you back.
Very good. Well, there you have it.
And thank you so much.